Thank you, everyone, for waiting. Good evening, Ms. Green. Good evening, everyone. My name is Wanda R.D. Williams. I'm the chair of the work session for this evening. And all of City Council members, today is Tuesday, October the 19th, 2021. And calling this meeting to order at 5:40 p.m. Ms. Houston, please do the roll call.
Mr. Allen?
Present.
Ms. Bowers?
Present.
Ms. Daniels?
Here.
Ms. Green?
Present.
Mr. Madsen?
Here.
Mr. Majors?
Here.
President Williams?
Present. Thank you, Ms. Houston. We now will move on to committee business, but before we do that, council members, if there is any conflict of interest that you have associated with any of the subrecipients, could you please state right now, please? I know Mr. Allett would like to make a comment. Is there anyone else who's associated with the subrecipients? Please indicate that, please.
Yes, I have to recuse myself from both discussion of Bill 11 and vote on Bill 11 due to relationship with one of the subrecipients.
Okay, anyone else? Okay. I'll now move on to committee business. Community and Economic Development Committee. I'll now turn the meeting over to Mr. Dave Madsen, council member.
Thank you, President Williams. Ms. Houston, would you mind reading Bill 11 into the record?
Bill 11 of 2021 is an ordinance appropriating community development block grant program funds for the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for fiscal year 2021 and 2022 and authorizing expenditure of such funds.
Okay, the administration is present to give us an overview.
Good evening, Madam President, Mr. Vice President and Chair, Honorable Madsen of the Community Economic Development Committee, as well as other members of council. Good evening. I'm Otto Banks, Executive Director of Department of Building and Housing. Of course, to my right, joining me is my deputy, Ms. Denise Hill. On background, the Community Development Block Grant Program was enacted in 1974 by President Gerald Ford through the Housing and Community Development Act of 74. The proposed community development block grant projects must be consistent with broad national priorities for CDBG activities that benefit low and moderate income people for the prevention and elimination of slum and blight or other community development activities to address an urgent threat to health or safety. CDBG funds can be used for housing rehabilitation, code enforcement, acquisition of real property, demolition, infrastructure, public facility improvements, economic development, and social services. This evening, we are joined by a group of individuals who we have recommended for allocation and support through the Community Development Block Grant for 2021. Madam Chair, how would you wish to proceed?
I'm sorry, Mr. Madsen is the chair this evening.
Mr. Madsen, sir, how would you wish to proceed?
Yeah, just for the benefit of the public and council as well. I know there's been a little bit of a journey when it comes to this program. And I know there's been a few folks sitting in your positions over the last few years. So could you just give us a brief overview? I mean, last year, I think the public really got an overview of this since we had some hiccups with the federal government. They essentially gave us a path forward to getting into compliance. I believe we have done that. That required a few consultants. But could you just, for the benefit of the public, just sort of touch on those things and just tell us where we're at to date?
To date, I believe that the city is in an excellent position. And of course, I believe that Ms. Hill and her team have done an excellent job in resolving many of those outstanding issues that have taken place. One of the
Could you please use the microphone?
yeah, it's on. It's on. Closer. Yeah, there's not a lot of room. Is that better?
Yeah.
Is that better? Okay. Yeah, of course, to their credit, they've done an excellent job. And that's really one of the reasons why that I was brought on, because there are still some outstanding concerns with the department, and we are currently in the process of resolving those concerns. So within the next several months, I believe all those issues will have been resolved. However, moving forward, we are definitely, as a city, in a very strong position for the next calendar year. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Sure.
So, and to speak directly to some of the issues that you were talking about directly with HUD, we were assigned a technical assistant 3 years ago. So we're entering into our 3rd year with that technical assistant assigned by HUD. However, we just had our most recent monitoring on these programs, and we received a letter in June of 2021 stating that all concerns have been resolved. So our findings, the team worked through 3 years worth of findings that are completely resolved at this point.
So just to clarify, you mentioned in the letter that there are no concerns, but Mr. Banks mentioned that there are still a couple of outstanding issues.
So the outstanding issues are HUD just wants to see going forward how any of the previous concerns will be handled and managed. So at a previous meeting, Mr. Banks also spoke about a standard operating procedure manual. So those are the types of things that we're working on to completely resolve everything.
You know, it's the objective of this department to ensure, regardless of who's in these positions, that the city continues to move forward in such a way that we are going to benefit exponentially, so that no matter who's here, the city will have a strong program and we will not be in a position where our resources are once again threatened.
Very good. Thank you for that. Yes, President Williams.
For all the public sitting in the audience this evening, please, if you have a comment or if you can't hear, please just put your hand up. Please don't yell out. Thank you.
Thank you, President. So the other question I have, and I'll open it up to my colleagues, and then we'll get into the subrecipients presentations, is in the past, I know a lot of the small mom and pop nonprofits have struggled with that compliance piece, and that has kind of led to some of the lingering issues we've had. Can you touch on maybe some of the things your department has done to address that compliance issue?
Absolutely. So the program manager, Caitlin Zadanek, has started a new method of communication with all subrecipients. So there will be a newsletter, also Zoom conferencing, and then quarterly reporting that we have to report to HUD. So there will be every month some form of communication with the subrecipients to make sure that we are not requiring information from them without providing the resource and information that they need to give that to us.
In addition to that, Honorable Madsen, we're also not administering the program from behind a desk any longer. We are going to actually go out in the field and do monitoring ourselves to ensure that our subrecipients are compliant with the rules and regs that are consistent with Community Development Block Grant or HUD themselves.
Okay. One question I have is part of that monitoring, including, I know a lot of nonprofits have to have a board, meetings and minutes. And does that include attending these board meetings and looking over a few minutes, particularly when it comes to allocations of funds?
So for our staff to attend the board meeting?
Well, you mentioned that you were going to do on-site visits. Does that entail that?
It does not entail that. However, they do have to present that information during the application. So a resolution has to be presented showing that the board is in support and in favor of the application.
Okay. Would you mind elaborating on what?
Yeah, I was going to say
yeah.
that it, although it's not required, that is something that can be added. And I see that, something that our internal team could definitely be more proactive in doing by attending those meetings, get a deeper understanding of the process to those organizations.
Open up to questions now. One last question I actually have was, candidly, it's been a little bit confusing with this process, and I'm not putting this on you folks, because some of the things have been going in Councilwoman Bowers' committee, because she's obviously the building and housing chair. And I know there's some overlap with community development and the building and housing department. Could you maybe touch on moving forward, which things would fall into Councilwoman Bowers' purview and which would fall into the community economic development committee?
Mr. Matz, that actually is a decision of the presiding officer of the council.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So, yes.
I apologize.
I was going to echo that. That's up to the president of council.
You have to talk with the president. then we'll start it off with Councilman Bowers to my left.
Thank you. I just had a follow-up question regarding the field monitoring. I was curious to know what that entails in reference to the compliance.
So most of that will be completed by Caitlin Zdanek. I will also be able to go out as well with her on occasions, but we will look at client files. We will look at any type of financials, any receipts and invoices that are provided, and everything is reimbursable. So anything that they submit to us, the organization pays first, and then they submit the receipts and invoices, and then it is paid out to them.
And so this will be in addition to the monthly communications that Caitlin will provide, or this will occur during the month?
It will be in addition. So it will be an added resource. So not only will the monitoring occur, but so will the newsletter and the quarterly reporting and the Zoom conferencing.
Okay, one last question. So then how many times within the month do you think that you would be physically on site with the organization?
With each organization, it will be once per month.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, of course, it's designed to be more proactive as opposed to reactive. So we want to make sure that we stay ahead of this moving forward so that we won't find ourselves in a similar situation or position that we were in before.
Sure, I understand. Thank you.
Councilman Green.
Thank you, Councilman Madsen. Yeah, it's one of those days. So I just have one question. Thank you. Just for the good of the public, could you go through the process the recipients went through in order to apply? How do we get to this point?
Absolutely. So there was a workshop held April 21st. It was held via Zoom. So all of the information on CDBG and ESG was provided to the subrecipients. We did have a certificate of completion for attending, and then they had 1 month. So the application was due then May 21st with all of the supporting documentation that came along with it. Throughout that time, throughout that month, Caitlin was in communication with different subrecipients if they had any questions, if they had any trouble completing the application. And then everyone submitted it, and then there was a scoring at the end to make sure that was directly in compliance with HUD guidelines, to make sure that there are allowable and permissible uses based on the budget that each organization submitted.
Thank you. That's the only question I have.
Thank you.
President Williams.
Ms. Hill. Right, interesting over there. Who exactly will be monitoring the funding and how they control what they do? And the log of just like, for instance, your Christian Churches United, they ask for money for rapid rehousing, homeless prevention, and emergency shelter. So who will be doing the monitoring, making sure they identify how many people they're sheltering, how they're doing homeless prevention? What type of training will they be doing to do rapid rehousing? So what are the things that's some of the things that I want to know. Who will be doing the monitoring?
Sure. So the monitoring will occur by the program manager, Caitlin Zdanek, and then myself supporting her. So that is monitored, like I said, through the invoices and the receipts, and making sure that what was spent is allowable and permissible. So the payment cannot go out until it is deemed that it is okay through CDBG or ESG respectively.
The reason I asked that, of course, you know why, is because some of our subrecipients were not adhering to the guidelines and regulations. So I don't want us to be in the same position that we were a couple of years ago.
Sure.
Vice President Allen. Okay. Oh, right. Yeah, sorry. Councilman Majors.
Yes, thank you. So just so I'm clear, I'm looking at the document that was handed out here prior. We have numbers for under purchase order for CDBG and then ESG as well. what I'm trying to get in terms of this document is where are those ESG numbers lining up? Because in Bill 12, which is the ESG document, the funds that are showing allocation don't match up to the numbers that are on this page.
Honorable Westman Majors, what occurs is that the reason why the numbers, you're not seeing them line up exactly is because part of the resources are utilized to offset operational administrative costs. So, and we have that.
Okay, so
Where do we have that broken down?
right. So I'm all right. I'm in Bill, just so for the council and the public that may be following along online, because all the bills are online.
Gotcha.
Bill 11 of 2021. That's the one I'm looking at. So I can, I was just speaking quick cross-reference. I can see CEO, I can see the Dalton County Library, I can see the LHAC number. The numbers that I am trying to reconcile and ensuring I'm seeing them or understanding the administration of them correctly are ESG numbers that are on this document provided us. So it's Cash, Christian Churches United, Justice House of Hope, Shalom House, and the YWCA.
So one error or update that was made after that was printed, Justice House of Hope is actually a CDBG allocation and not ESG. I apologize.
Do you have that list? We have to amend this. So,
Okay, so that's it. So that's one. But then again, so for the rest of them, and then when I look at Bill 12, the numbers for those same organizations don't match the amount of funding that we're talking about providing them out of the ESG fund. So that's where I'm having the question. So whether it's, that's just going to have to be, I just want to make sure we're pulling the money from the right funding source, whether it's ESG or CDBG. Because on Bill 12, with respect to Shalom House and the YWCA, we are looking to allocate $25,000 each. But the document in front of us shows $50,000 each.
So they should be 25,000. That it was over a 2-year period.
Okay.
They should be 25,000 for this particular bill. Out of the 2021 allocation is only the 25,000.
Okay. So then for the applicants that we do have for us, I guess just let me take a step back then. So just in terms of how the process worked, about how many applicants, participated in the process versus the number that we ended up awarding, because it's looking to. So 8, I guess I'll move. Justice House for Hope would be 9. So we have 9 total sub-recipients for CDBG.
Correct.
Then can you just talk to me about how many people look to participate in the process when you initially had it? How did that process go? Because 9 is a good amount, but quite frankly, we have a lot of folks that have a lot of need in Harrisburg. There's a lot of nonprofits. So I'm just trying to understand how we got to that number, or there are a lot that just didn't meet requirements, a lot that didn't submit paperwork. How did we get from however many participating?
So for CDBG, the 9 that are on this list are the 9 that applied, as well as ESG. So there were 4 applicants received. So everyone that applied is on this list.
Okay. And then can we talk a little bit about what those outreach efforts look like from your organization, from CDB, from Building and Housing or Community Economic Development to do outreach in the community? Because posting it online is great, social media, but what are we doing to get to nonprofits? Because quite honestly, I don't think you can walk too many blocks in Harrisburg and not run into a nonprofit. And we know that there's a lot of need in our community. So if there's only 9 people submitting applications and 9 are getting awards, that's great for those 9. But there are, I don't even want to take a guess at how many. I could just say hundreds of nonprofits in Harrisburg.
So that is the outreach to organizations is definitely one thing that I personally would like to beef up out of the department. So of the 9 that applied for CDBG, only 3 were new applicants. So they were not organizations that did not previously apply or deal with DBHD in some capacity previously.
And then what does that look like for you moving forward in the future? No, we can't do anything right now, but what does that outreach look like as we look to next year? Because we're not gonna, as soon as this one's done, we're not gonna be too far away from another grant cycle coming around for CDBG.
Well, Mr. Majors, what that looks like is that we could actually look at leveraging those resources with those from different organizations. So right now, CDBG resources are not infinite, they're finite. There's only essentially $2 million. And then when you take out the administrative portion that's used to essentially fund or partially fund the department itself, leaves essentially $806,138 to be utilized. So when you're talking about opening up or expanding the universe, it's going to reduce the amount that's available to cover like homeless shelters and many of these other organizations that really do extremely good work in our community, but they may not be able to continue that good work if there's a severe reduction in their appropriation. So with that being said, again, I'll go back to the original statement. We need to look at better ways to leverage these resources against others that may be available. For example, Title I money from the Harrisburg School District. The Harrisburg School District, pales in comparison. You guys are responsible for oversight of 49,000 people. The school district is responsible for what, Madam Chair? 6,000 essential students. Their budget is a lot larger than the city of Harrisburg. We got to look at how can we use some of our money and marry it with the school district and create additional opportunities for our family and children.
Yeah, no, I think partnerships aren't a bad thing, but so understand that, and that's partnerships that.
Because that's how we're going to grow.
I agree.
Yeah.
Another question that we always ask, debt service. How much longer are we going to be using our CDBG money for debt service? How many more payments do we have left?
The last payment will be made August of 2026.
All right. That's 5 more years. Because again, that's additional funding that could be going to community programs to the tune of $240,000 that could be also used to provide to our to some of our nonprofits in the city. That money can go further, but we definitely do agree that leveraging relationships with our school district is something that's important. And again, I appreciate all the hard work that's being done. The other thing that I always bring up is, we are using a significant amount of the money for CDBG administration. I know it's up to the allowable amount, but we do have, but I think we look to, redirect some funds maybe in the future, since we do have, and again, as we talk about fund balance for the city of Harrisburg, if we're able to, maybe offset 1 year or two, so we can get more of the CDBG money out to the community. That's something that I think we all would be supportive of. And then I think you did mention that we do have some of the applicants here that can potentially talk to their program. So no additional questions for you all. And if we do another round of the applicants, I may have some additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel.
So just to clarify, there were no additional applicants?
Correct.
And then, excuse me, do you have the information of, did they all receive exactly what they requested, or do you have the documentation of what they requested compared to what they received?
I do. So the only difference in what was requested and what was,
There's only one copy.
mhm. So you'll see the funding requested column. And the only 2 are right about the middle of the page, the Worship Academy and YPOC.
Excuse me. The other question I had was, if you could do me the favor of kind of refreshing me in terms of where we are process-wise, because we are a little bit out of the ordinary schedule. And I thought
The fiscal year for DBHD runs off of the HUD fiscal year, which was October 1 to September 30. So the 2021 program year just started October 1st. So the applications were received in May to allow for the time so that when October 1 hit, that we would be able to just resume funding from the previous program year.
so, what's our deadline for this bill right now?
So technically, the annual action plan has already been reviewed and approved by council and sent to HUD. So there isn't a deadline other than the fact that subrecipients are now able to submit invoices. So once council makes it through the process, then we would be able to draw up contracts with legal and then immediately start to get invoices, but they are able to backdate to October 1.
That's it for me.
Oh, President Wade had a few questions, and everybody was great.
So I just wanted to make sure I was clear. So the funds that we're allocating are for federal fiscal year 21,
Yes,
which began
October 1.
October 1 of 2021.
Yes.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to make sure it's fiscal year. All right, perfect, thank you.
Yes. I'm going back to what Mr. Majors had asked. On this bill number 11, you have number 12, I'm sorry. You have CCU 44,214. But yet still over here, it's a different number. So how are you telling me that we have, it should be 25,000, but on this paper it has 50,000?
CCU is one of the ones that is a 2-year.
I know you said a 2 years, so you're saying half this year and half next year.
Yes, ma'am.
So you're identifying that.
Yes.
So we need to make sure the public understands what we're doing with that. You have one document that has 50,000, another document that states it's 25.
Sure.
So maybe we need to be more clear when we do that. When we go through the housing and community development activities, I'm going to ask that you indicate about the demolition, how many homes that we expected, demolish this year. And what we did last year. You don't have that information, so you're going to get that from Mr. Pack.
Yes, ma'am.
But let me know how much money we're going to spend on this year and how many homes we will demolition. Grant administration, you have $12,536,000. But then here you have under your CDBG administration 402. Is that included with that amount of money? Because we have the administration of the money here, and then you have the grant administration. Is this 12,000 included with the 402,000?
On the two separate bills,
Right,
you
on the
mean?
two separate bills.
Yes, so the 12,536 is the maximum allowable amount out of the ESG money.
Okay.
And then the
okay,
400-51 is for CDBG.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else? Okay, this is Dave. Do you have anything you'd like to add? We'll open it up now to hear from the subrecipient. First, I have an abbreviation, PAIRW, Erwin. And a Rick Kearns. Okay, please, Brent. Yep,
Mr. Madison, would you?
yeah, right there. Mic work?
Okay, I'm Rick Kearns. I am the lead family advocate for the Pennsylvania Immigrant Women and Refugees Network.
Okay.
And
Just give us a little bit of the overview of the project and how you'd like to use the funds.
sure, the project involves outreach to immigrant families in the city. And what we're hoping and we have started to do is to do direct assistance to students in the city school district through tutoring and other kinds of advocacy, as well as helping the families interact with the school district and other authorities. And in my case, I'm bilingual in Spanish, so I'm going to be working with and I have worked with a lot of the Spanish-speaking students and families. And what we're hoping to do is to develop a network of connections with immigrant families throughout the city who have children in the city school district, and provide those services to them, as well as connect them to other resources that could be helpful to.
You mentioned you work with the Spanish-speaking community, but you have a lot of other folks. from
Oh,
other parts
yes,
of the
we
world.
also have Arabic-speaking volunteers and staff. We have French-speaking volunteers and staff. We have Nepali speaking folks, and we're looking into finding some folks who might be able to speak Pashtun for the Afghan folks who are coming and are here. But yeah, those are the major language groups that we're working with right now.
Before I open up to questions from my colleagues, just out of curiosity, how many Afghan folks do you expect to come into the Harrisburg?
I'm not sure, but my understanding is it'll be a few hundred. It could be more. It's
Right.
just a general.
Fluid,
Yeah. I mean, they're here,
Yeah,
right?
so we're gonna, hopefully we'll be interacting with them soon.
That's it for me. I will open it up for my colleagues. This time we'll start to the far right with Councilman Daniel.
Hopefully just a couple quick questions.
Sure.
Is this your first time applying for CDBG funds through the city of Harrisburg?
For Perwin, no, Perwin has applied.
Okay, they've applied before and received money before, okay. And then in terms of that advocacy, what does that look like in terms of being able to, how about what percentage of the CDBG funds does this represent for your overall budget for your organization?
I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to ask my director to speak to that. The director of the program is here, Carolyn Patterson.
All of our requested CDBG money will go to the Family Advocacy Program. And staff that will be hired under this is purely for this program. Perwin is small, mostly run by volunteer organization. And so the funding for this project will go directly to this project.
Okay. And then in terms of, I guess, well, no, the other check will be with the city. So hopefully we're doing our due diligence to ensure that the funds are being utilized for city only residents and doing all the outreach. And what does that, and how does that outreach work in this COVID environment, since you're already doing the work now?
Yes, it did affect our work last year because of COVID. Unfortunately, we were not able to do certain portions of the program because they really required being in person. The program really is threefold. It's the homework, we call it homework help. It's tutoring, helping kids understand what their homework and assignments are about, and understanding what testing that's coming up and that kind of thing. Our second component is to work with parents, provide some interpretation, moral support for things like parent-teacher conferences and other interactions with the school, because we find there's often a real gap there where parents don't even try contacting the school. And the last component, which last year was most severely affected, was we want to have monthly workshops for the families in things like understanding our school system, understanding the testing, understanding how to apply for college, all those kinds of things that we as Americans take for granted, to help them understand how to get their kids through the school system. That portion was mostly affected last year because of not being able to be in person, and we just couldn't make it work with COVID, with the remote. But this year we are moving forward. We're already working with the school district in planning all of those components for this kids. Under this funding, the kids will be all Harrisburg City School kids and families. Anything that we would do beyond City of Harrisburg, we would be seeking funding from other sources to help us expand that.
Okay, and then just two last questions.
Mhm.
Do you receive any funding from the school district of the city of Harrisburg for the programs?
No,
Okay, and then do you do any work with trying to connect parents with access to internet services?
we did not really have the resources to do that last year, and that is one of the things that going forward is on our list to work on. Is if there is a need to do things remotely again, how can we make it happen in terms of connecting the families with the services in order to have those programs happen?
Okay, just as a quick aside then, I know, I cannot remember if it's still going on, but I know Comcast was doing a deal with their Internet Essentials where they were providing free
Mhm.
internet access service. So making sure that our folks are connected with that as much as they can. And I know that's difficult when you're trying to deal with a language barrier.
Right.
But we want to make sure kids have as much opportunity to learn to see it in our
Okay.
community. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
President.
I don't have any questions, but I have a comment. I just want to thank you for your willingness to step up and help the inner city schools and the children. It's so desperately needed that we can have someone who speaks fluent bilingual, and as well as to be an interpreter for parents here. ESL teachers is very, very hard to find.
Yes.
So I
that's so true.
commend you. So thank you. And I did know that you came here for the last couple of years, prepare when Mr. Majors wasn't aware of that. So
Yeah.
I thank you again for continuing with your services and helping those families.
Thanks.
Councilwoman Green?
Thank you. I don't have many questions. Just one. I see that you run an internship program for local university students in your organization. Have you paired with your local workforce development board to expand those opportunities?
We have in the past worked mostly with Penn State Harrisburg and Messiah University, both of which have strong ESL education programs and diversity programs that we've been able to tap into. But we have not really expanded beyond that in terms of pulling out internship programs. But if there are resources that we can turn to, we would love to know about them so that we can reach out.
All right, thank you. I would love to work with you. I know some people for local workforce development board that has the opportunity to pay for students to do internships at local nonprofits. So
That would be
maybe we can
fantastic.
reactivate.
It's exactly the kind of thing we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Bowers?
Thank you. I have two questions. Good evening. You mentioned that staff will be hired for this particular program. How many staff are you anticipating?
We're hiring staff on a contract basis. They're all part-time, so 15 hours or less, in fact, for under this particular funding. We'll have a total of 4, our project coordinator, Mr. Kearns, our lead family advocate, a volunteer coordinator, and then a family advocate who's basically a person who's a support person to help the other staff people get the programs on the ground.
Okay, this might be a more technical question, but I'm just curious, what evaluation tools will be used to implement the program's success?
We are still developing that. However, our main tool will be post-program in terms of like after each workshop or during the after-school program throughout the year, surveys on asking what the needs are, whether we have met the needs, satisfaction with the program. And we will also, we meet monthly with school board officials to make sure that we stay on a timeline, and then they can let us know the needs they have and we can communicate to them what we're able to do. So that is a more of an informal style, but we will be taking surveys and keeping records of folks' reaction to our program, as well as keeping track of the number of students and families that we reach.
Okay, thank you. I did have a follow-up. I was curious to know how many students you are anticipating participating?
Well, Rick, what do you think? Last year, we reached, we were working as an introductory program with just the freshman and sophomore class at John Harris, and we had 25 students. This year, we are hoping to reach out to all grade levels. So our anticipation is
well over 100.
At least 100, yeah. Because when we've been speaking with the superintendent, he told us that approximately 1/3 of the school district students have a language other than English spoken in their home, so would be affected by language barriers. So we anticipate that if we were reaching 25 in one grade level at one school, that once we are working with all the schools, we should be getting at least 25 from each school. That's our hope.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much for all your work in the community, coming out this evening to tell us all about the project, and appreciate it very much. Best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next applicant we have is CCU, Daryl Weinford. Approach. Good evening, Mr. Weinford.
Good evening.
Mind just providing us your name, your title, and then a brief overview of the project?
Sure. My name is Daryl Rainford. I'm Executive Director at Christian Churches United. And these funds are to support our there's 3 different pieces of the ESG funding in our Help Ministries program. The first is emergency shelter. And at our Help Ministries program, we are sort of a hub for women and children and families so that they don't have to go to each individual shelter to ascertain whether there's space, and we can do some of that initial screening for the shelters. So that is the primary use of the ESG funds. We have also during this COVID time also been actually sheltering hundreds of families in hotels. So normally we don't actually do a lot of the sheltering ourselves, and that's totally apart from these funds with other funds. And then we also run some emergency shelters in the winter, again, apart from this funding. But that is just sort of overall what we do in the sheltering arena. Then we also have some funds, as Councilwoman Wanda said, for homeless prevention and rapid rehousing. Homeless prevention helps provide some rent for folks to avoid eviction if they would be homeless if they were evicted. And then the rapid rehousing is for people that are already homeless in some way, whether they're on the streets or in shelters, helping them with rent to get and case management to get into apartments. The homeless prevention and rapid rehousing, we leverage these funds also with funding from Dauphin County to do those programs. And so that, allows us to have, additional staff to provide, sort of more substantial support across the board in those programs. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the benefit of the community, I'd like to just provide some background on what ESG actually is. The emergency shelter grant is provided to assist individuals and families to quickly regain stability and permanent housing after experiencing a housing crisis or homelessness. There's actually 6 major areas that it addresses. One, of course, is engagement, as this gentleman, of course, has already spoke to. They engage homeless individuals and families that are currently living on the street. They also improve the number and quality of emergency shelters or homeless individuals and families. They help operate these shelters. They provide essential services to shelter residents. They rapidly rehouse homeless individuals and families. And last but not least, of course, they prevent families and individuals from becoming homeless. So those are the primary uses of ESG funds.
Question, first, thank you for all your work. It's fantastic. You are anticipating this to be a pretty cold winter, from what I understand. And, utilities are increasingly one of the biggest things folks are calling the program 211, which is 24/7 hotline for social services. Electric, gas tend to be some of the highest, particularly with seniors. Do you think the funds that you're getting allocated are enough to potentially address the demand that we might see this winter?
These funds are a drop in the bucket in terms of what is needed in terms of homelessness services. Again, but they're certainly important in helping us provide that. But utilities in general, again, there's other. Thankfully, we actually operated one of PPL's programs. Thankfully, the emergency rental assistance program that's available now can help with those utilities. So there actually are some other funding sources that hopefully will be adequate to help meet the need for particularly like utility assistance. But these funds in particular, like I said, are really sort of a drop in the bucket compared to the overall funding that's needed to meet the needs.
While we're on this topic, that we have allocated or did as much possible with these funds to address the homelessness concerns, particularly given the brutal winter we're going to see.
Absolutely. Again, there are only, $2,025,255 that we receive, out of which, of course, $806,000 is made available to subrecipients. That's why I have to speak again to what Mr. Westburn Major said. We have to figure out a way to work with these different levels of government, and even here in the city with the school district, to partner and marry those funds together so we can create more robust opportunities for our children and families. Again, our school district, as you know, Madam President, receives millions upon millions of dollars. And I can just imagine if we partner with them and partner with the county and make best use of those funds to be able to provide more for our community.
All right, that's it for me. Given's touched on housing, I'll start part of that with Councilwoman Bowers.
Thank you. Thank you for being here this evening, and I'm just reviewing the objectives of the ESG program, and I believe that everything that you mentioned that you're doing fits the program requirements. I did have a question, and maybe this would be better suited for Mr. Banks. In terms of other eligible program components, it's outlined here. The homeless management information system, that grant funds can be used for either that particular information system or a comparable database. I was just curious Is that something that we've sort of exercised before? Is there a information system present?
Yeah, so that will actually be a part of the funding that Cash will speak about, the
Okay.
Capital Area Coalition on Homelessness.
Okay, thank you. So
No problem.
I'll wait. I don't have any additional questions. Again, thank you for being here tonight and sharing the work that you're doing.
And I can add that we are a part of using that system, even though we're not asking funds, for our
Okay.
use of that. That is something that it's actually required for any recipient of the grant. So yes, we are using that system.
Thank you for clarifying.
Councilman Green.
I don't have any questions. Thank you for the work you do. I know you guys work with a lot of people here within the city. I'm constantly referring people your way, so thank you for the help that you provide. I guess one question as far as not so much this, more about your program. I know we have a lot of young men who are experiencing homelessness, and we don't have as many options for them. Does your program offer anything? Are you looking to expand that way? And if not, where would you point them as far as direction?
Again, that is one of the roles of our winter. We do have a winter shelter to try to expand the options for emergency shelter anyway, in terms of for young men in the winter. We do have, over the last 2 years, we've been developing a sort of more direct street outreach component, again, which we're not actually asking for funds for in this, but that's the goal of those folks, is to connect anybody who's experiencing homelessness with resources. And again, related to the database, trying to get information to link them up to whatever programs would be appropriate for them. So that's sort of the efforts that we're making. Just trying to be out there and make sure that people are aware of resources. We're often, unfortunately, one of the first steps for a lot of folks coming out of homelessness might be connecting them with a rooming house that they can afford once they, first get work. We also do help at the Help Office with providing a bus pass if somebody needs that when they're first starting a job. So that's another way that we've tried to help people take that step out of homelessness.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Williams.
How many people do you service per year, would you say, during the winter months?
In all of our programs, or
Just an overall total.
Sure. I mean, again, over a year, and COVID has been different because we've had a lot of additional
sure, we
funding,
have to count.
but generally over a year's time, we generally serve 2,000 households. And that's not just in the city, obviously.
That includes all the services that you
Right,
provide,
yes,
right?
yeah.
But when you talk about shelter and rapid rehousing, how many would you estimate?
Sure. In terms of shelter, in our winter shelter, we're generally housing between 10 and 20. Well, actually, with our women, now that we have men's and women's, it's more like 30. And with our placement into other shelters, generally, again, looking at quarterly figures, it's often been about 300 individuals. That's not households, but households made up with children, those per quarter. And rapid rehousing, generally, we're working with about 10 families at any one point. So throughout the year, and with them, we're working with them multiple months. So probably in the year, anywhere from 40 to 50 families.
And do you do referrals to the Bethesda Mission? That's for men and only.
Right.
So you do your
Yes,
referrals there too as
absolutely.
well?
Yeah.
Okay, that's another shelter for males.
Right.
Okay. I just all the questions I have. I just want to thank you for, providing a service to the city of Harrisburg. One of the things we want to do is to address the homelessness on the street.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councilman Majors.
Thank you. You had already mentioned the additional funds that have been made available throughout the pandemic. What kind of partnership or marrying together of those funds with these are you doing to help those that are either at homeless or at risk of experiencing homelessness? Since we do have the emergency rental and utility assistance program, are each of your clients paired with someone that is working like a case manager to work them through some of those processes? Because I think with a lot of this funding, it may be available for them should they, fill it out, but that sometimes is a barrier for people to be able to apply for this much needed assistance.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, right now, the emergency rental assistance for those that are, again, looking to prevent prevent eviction, we're starting with that as the first line of defense, you could say. But yeah, in general, I mean, one of the advantages of the Health Ministry's office has been able to present is sort of provide sort of a one-stop shop in terms of a variety of services to connect people to those. And again, with rapid rehousing and homeless prevention funds through the county in particular, there's been additional funds. So, we've actually been able to expand our staff to provide, some additional case management.
Further questions, right? Thank you.
Councilwoman Daniels? President?
Can you tell me, is the county giving you match funding for this?
So officially, we can't match ESG funding with ESG funding, but we are able to.
Well, I understand that,
yeah.
but the funding they give you, is it equal to what City of Harrisburg you requested from us?
Yes, yeah. again, we
Okay,
actually
that's,
get- yeah,
and I understand that you can't do a match, but
Sure,
I should have rephrased it
Right.
differently.
Yeah.
Okay,
but yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Any other additional questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. Best of luck.
Thank you for having
Appreciate
me.
all you do for the community. Okay, next we have YPOC, Dr. Campbell.
We had a presentation, we didn't know if it was able to share. It's okay if
Technical
not.
question.
Not a problem.
Do you have handouts?
I do not,
Okay, that's
but I
okay.
can email it to you guys if you need.
You can email it to our clerk. And then she'll forward it to the rest of us.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Dr. Kamika Campbell. This is Mr. Corey Dupree. We're representing young professionals of color and the Juneteenth Jubilee. We want to tell you a little bit about our request. So I'm just going to basically go through the slides as if they were up. So bear with me a moment. So good evening to Council President Williams, Chair Madsen, and members of council. We thank you in advance for inviting us to present our Juneteenth HBG 2022 proposal to you. Juneteenth HBG has been in the making for over 5 years. Young professionals of color, Greater Harrisburg, we have partnered with various organizations over the years to make Juneteenth an enjoyable and economic upliftment and educational time for all attendees. We would first like to thank Ms. Denise Hill and Ms. Caitlin Zdanek for their assistance in making this process accessible to our organization. We present this proposal to you with the goal of securing funding for Juneteenth 2022 and related events. So first, as we build upon what we've cultivated over the last 5 years, our goals remain the same: to engage our community in economic empowerment and recreational activities, to observe and commemorate the anniversary of the last enslaved persons freed in this country. We did the 5 W's. We're forming a Juneteenth HBG collaborative, the Juneteenth Steering Committee, which consists of right now UPMC's Healthy Harrisburg Program Director, the District Restaurant, Young Professionals of Color, La Cultura, handles entertainment, and others. We're collectively working with businesses and sponsors to create a week of Jubilee. It's going to be June 12th to 19, 2022. It will be limited to the city limits with what anyone can enjoy. It'll be a week long of activities to observe emancipation and abolition of slavery in PA and the country, highlighting partnerships with local businesses and institutions. The how, we're going to work with business owners, financial institutions, and local government to create a sustainable partnership with the city of Harrisburg for a long-standing Juneteenth Jubilee celebration. We are basically hoping this will be our first of many partnerships with the city. Any questions before I go on? Okay, so a little bit of history. Of course, we're doing this in the wake of Juneteenth being a federal holiday. It was previously declared a state holiday. Juneteenth celebrations across the city happened last year, and we are also hoping, our goal is to bring different organizations together for a citywide celebration incorporating as many entities as possible. So what's happening? Again, we with the guidance of Ms. Hill and Ms. Zdanek, we identified some programming areas that we thought would align. Those programming areas for eligible activities are public services, rehabilitation, interim assistance, homeownership assistance, and micro enterprise assistance. Under public services, this falls under programs that are centered around job training, educational programs, and community inclusive recreation programs. To that end, we will be doing events with various entities such as Recycle Bicycle, Penn State Health. We'll be doing a kickoff rally for Juneteenth, poetry in the park, art therapy, and resume workshops, among others, under that category. Next, we have rehabilitation, nonprofit-owned, non-residential buildings and improvements that are not considered to be public facilities or improvements under the section of the CDGB program regulations. We'll be hopefully undergoing some upgrades and repairs of the YPOC house, which is at 315 South Front Street, to make it more in compliance with ADA regulations, so folks can get in and out of the establishment, to secure the space, and to heating and cooling. Interim assistance, this falls on the execution of garbage, trash, and debris removal, including neighborhood cleanup campaigns. For our Juneteenth activities, we have slated 2 cleanups, one in Uptown, the Uptown Cleanup Initiative, and the Allison Hill Cleanup Initiative, and we'll be partnering with local organizations to do that as well. Home ownership assistance, pay any and all of the reasonable closing costs associated with home purchase on behalf of the purchaser. This will be part of our home ownership renaissance workshops that will start in May and be presented, the recipients will be presented with certificates at our Juneteenth Jubilee on June 19th. We also have micro enterprise assistance, same idea. We will be having workshops running throughout May, and if the participants are successful, they'll get to be economic, or their micro enterprise will be presented for as a kind of showcasing their products at our Mining Our Black-Owned Business block party that's powered by La Cultura, which was very successful last year, basically helping smaller micro businesses get their business plans together, making sure that they have a plan, making sure that they hit those, they have a plan for those road bumps within the first year of having their micro business. And then we have other events as well that do not necessarily fall under the other categories that we will be seeking a combination of funding for. So we'll be doing a Juneteenth HBG business walk, a concert, and a Juneteenth Jubilee in the park. We do kind of slate those under recreation, and we do understand that only 15% of the total funds can go towards, we can only request 15% of the total. Our budget right now is right around $150 for total cost. We're requesting somewhere between $80,000 and $90,000. We have an updated budget worksheet for you all to peruse as well. And that just basically breaks out all the costs for each type of event, each eligible activity, the total cost, any matching or requested, and any resources needed. We also have had a lot of past partners. We're confident that we can get the matching funds. We have partnered with D&H last year, Giant, Clark Resources, La Cultura, amongst many others, Major Prep, Watchmen, amongst many other organizations and community partners as well, to help us bring an economic uplift event to the Harrisburg area. And last but not least, our call to action is for the community as well. We need you to help us pull this off. One of the things that made our event super successful last year is that we had over 30 different partners. So it's definitely a community event. It's definitely something that we want folks to participate in. Business owners, we want to showcase the products and services that we have in the community in an effort to serve some of our underserved areas. And also we want to promote civic engagement and community uplift. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you for that. It was very thorough. Anybody have anything they'd like to add? So there was a lot there. I just want to make sure I understand all the pieces to it. So this is all under the umbrella of Juneteenth celebration. And then I counted, I guess, 5 prongs to that, essentially.
Yes.
One being a celebration, essentially,
Mhm.
which is self-explanatory. A home ownership training component to this, where then folks would be announced that they finished the program and we would celebrate them finishing the program. Some upgrades to your headquarters.
To the community space, yes.
Yeah. And then the micro enterprise piece. And I have a 5 here, but I'm
And then the last one was a combination of public services. So let's see here. Yep, the cleanup, poetry in the park, and so on and so forth. So that kind of, it's
some community service projects.
yep,
essentially.
community service and also just community recreation.
All those sound like fine ideas to me.
We really had to comb that book to make sure we were doing it right.
That I'm sure that was vetted, so you're in compliance with those regulations. I guess particularly on the home ownership piece, that's a big issue for folks in the community. How do you plan on advertising that?
So we wanted, the first piece I was thinking of is that there are some programs, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of NACA, the Neighborhood Advancement Corporation of America. So we're gonna try to follow their model where we put folks through some credit preparedness, first year homeownership preparedness, and then general knowledge around homeownership, securing funding, et cetera. And the way we want to advertise it is for basically homeowners who feel like they, one, don't have the funds or the means to do it. And then two, in our communities where we know they may have the opportunity to own a home, but don't know the first ins and outs of it. So we want to hit those neighborhoods that we know where folks could own their home, but don't necessarily know a way forward for that. And of course, using our social media and different listservs that we already have in place.
Well, please let us know how we can help.
Absolutely.
That's it for me. I'll open it up now to questions from my colleagues, given it's a celebration, probably involves Parks and Rec. So
yes.
Daniel.
Okay.
No questions at this time. I might have to have a question with the solicitor. It's an organization that I am a board member of, was a sponsor of an event. Should I recuse myself from any discussion?
You should
on this?
absolutely recuse yourself.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, yes, thank you.
President Williams?
No questions, but I just look forward to being a part of that. So anything that I can do, please don't hesitate to ask.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay.
Councilman Green?
Thank you. Just a couple questions. I look forward to it. It seems like a lot going on, so very much needed for our community. I think it'll be a great resource for our community. Now, this is all going to happen over a 1-week period.
So we actually started off with 1 week, but we realized that for some of the economic uplift pieces, we needed to start in May. So the micro business incubator and the homeownership renaissance program, those are going to be over the May period. And then in June, we'll present them at the Jubilee. The persons who successfully completed the program.
Okay. And then also I see here it says application pending. Could the administration talk about a little bit?
Sure. So that is strictly just because, as Dr. Campbell indicated, she's been working with Caitlin Zdanek. So the full ask was for the entire week long. So we have been working with her to just make sure that we got all of the permissible uses of what we could pay for CDBG.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I look forward to it.
Thank you.
So would there be additional monies available for this particular project?
So at this point, we have been able to identify that that would be the max that we would be able to. So it's just identifying all of the activities that she has and aligning that with the budget.
Just for clarification, since we have to edit this, the max you mean is the number that's in the budget right now, the 28,000.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, Councilman Bowers?
Thank you. I do have a few questions. Okay, so you mentioned that the Juneteenth Harrisburg Collaborative, you mentioned a number of partners. So you said that there were approximately 30 partners that participated?
Last year, yes.
Okay. Now, you also discussed other Juneteenth celebrations that occurred earlier this year. So are those organizations that hosted those separate events, are they among the 30 partners that you mentioned?
Some of them are, yes. Not all of them, but some of them are.
If I might add, I know the 30 partners sounds immense and it sounds scary, but a lot of them were sponsors of the event, which we counted as our community partners. So in terms of the planning and things like that, it was a much smaller group. But so a lot of the ones doing the work, but we still count them as partners.
No, it's not daunting. I was just curious. I just wanted to know, since I think the thought is to make this a recurring citywide event, I wanted to understand who would be included under this umbrella.
Absolutely. So I think that's why I wanted to make sure I show the PowerPoint, but it's okay. I'll send it to you guys as well. But the collaborative is the first group. So basically what we did is we started reaching out to groups that we knew did things last year. For example, there was the Healthy Harrisburg, UPMC's Healthy Harrisburg celebration on City Island. So we already have an MOU with them, with Jenkel, who's the director of that program, Jenkel Sherry, to work together for the Juneteenth celebration this year.
For the homeowner renaissance workshops, what is your goal? Like, how many future homeowners do you intend to aid?
So we're only going to start with 7 this year for both the Renaissance Workshop and for the Micro Business Incubator. And we want to get sponsorships. We already have secured some funding, but we want to do for the homeowners Renaissance Workshop, we want to do $1,000 at the end, payable to their closing cost organization. And then for the Micro Business Incubator, we want to pay for any entree fees into various pop-ups or other kind of like flea market style entrance that they may need so that they can showcase their businesses for the first time. So that'll be their kind of reward at the end of the program. The one in particular that we're thinking of is the Minding My Black-Owned Business Block Party. So last year there were 2 days of celebration. There's an entree fee for that. So I think it's like $100 for both days. So making sure they are in a position to actually enter that and showcase their products.
Okay. I think those were my only questions right now. So thank you. I think this is definitely needed, and I think it's nice that at least some of the organizations that hosted events last year are collaborating with us.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for all your work in the community and coming out. Best of luck. for all your
Thank you.
efforts. Thank you. Okay. Next, we have Justice House of Hope, Justice Maddox. Justice Maddox. Could you state your name and title for the record and just give us an overview of the project?
My name is Justice Maddox. I'm the CEO and founder of Justice House of Hope. And this is Kotrika Maddox. She's a co-founder of Justice House of Hope.
Would you mind putting the mic a little closer to yourself so folks can hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
you gotta get.
All right.
Really.
My name is Justice Maddox. I'm the CEO and founder of Justice House of Hope. This is Kotrika Maddox. She's co-founder of Justice House of Hope.
Okay. Would you like to provide us an overview of the project?
Trying to get to the mic.
Yeah.
So our program is a program that is based on helping victims of human trafficking, sexual assault, and domestic violence. So what we are opting to do is to provide housing, to provide preventative services, education, outreach, and intensive case management and counseling for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. This is our first time before everybody. This is our first time receiving funds or applying for funds. We have a tremendous amount of work that we would like to accomplish. We are working with other organizations such as Valley House Youth. We have Missing Girls Club. We also have received letters of assistance from the Sheriff's Office and from other agencies throughout, some in Harrisburg and some in other counties such as York.
And we work with at-risk from the age of 12 up to the age of 23. When we come across a victim of human trafficking, we work with the local authorities to bring them or to find a safe place for them to go. At this time, we do not have a home to place the children in, which that's something we're working on. It's better for them to be able to stay in a facility with known faces that they work with. I go out at night with the individuals looking in other neighborhoods. Dauphin County, Harrisburg is kind of high. We have at least 21 girls that was trafficked. So we replace them with our local authorities. We work with other agencies, put them, if their children are under the age of 18, we have to turn them over to Children and Youth Services. We work with Children and Youth Services to come up with a plan for the children. Some children can be turned back home, some cannot. Our LGBT community has grown over the last 6 months. I think we are having, since the pandemic has occurred, that it's been a lot of children out skipping schools and getting involved with things that they shouldn't be involved with, and working with them, trying to get them on the right track is very important to us. We do not go out alone. We have to go out with some of the local police authorities, and we're also trying to bring, and we do work with a local FBI agent as well. So we're trying to bring education to our schools, which is very important. Especially in our Dauphin County area, we find that a lot of our urban kids are not going to school or skipping school. And some of them are trying to do the online school, which they're not really focused on because of other things that's going on in the home.
Like that.
I'll speak a little bit about the resources that we are offering the youth. So we did say intensive case management. So our goal is to help them understand and identify the lapse of judgment in certain things. A lot of the victims of human trafficking come from scenarios such as the Romeo and Juliet scenarios, where they may have a partner who is a boyfriend who is older and they're trafficking them. Oftentimes we have other victims and or survivors that have been placed in a situation where they're living with other people, living with older gentlemen, and they are doing things in order to sustain themselves. So we do have a program that's evidence-based that is called Ending the Game, that we utilize to help the girls and or males understand the importance of their body, the power of no, and trying to help them re-identify their self-worth. I'm also a life coach, so I assist the young ladies and also gentlemen with aspects of self-love, helping them obtain gainful employment that does not require them to use their body, helping them identify the importance of their education, helping them understand the importance of their mental health and getting them linked up with therapists. We are all currently working with licensed therapists to help with the equine therapy so that they can identify with horses and understanding how, to groom and to love them, things like that, so that they're not just talking about the trauma that has occurred, but they have another outlet. I think that's all, unless you guys have questions.
First, thank you so much for this work. Tragic. These sorts of efforts, but are. I know the Harrisburg region has a high volume of human trafficking. And does this amount, maybe this question for the administration, are we allocating enough funds to necessarily address the need?
No, we're not. We need more resources. We do. And we have to be creative in terms of our approach and how we obtain them. One of the things that we can do is with this organization, when they go after federal funding, it often requires the support of a local municipality to sign off. And that's something that we could do, of course, with the support of council, if council sees fit, that when many of the organizations that come to us for resources, if they want to go to the state or the federal government, they need their local buy-in. So of course, that would be incumbent, upon council, that if you come across an organization that you feel is worthy of your seal, Madam President, then we can assist them in obtaining more funds at different levels of government. But I'll be the first to state, we need a shelter for these young people and these women who are thrown out in the middle of the night and have no place to go. There's a severe shortage, especially when they mention the LGBTQ community as well. I visit, is it GLOW on 3rd Street? I went to the GLOW Resource Center and I had a discussion with them and found that there's a huge demographic of the young people that once their parents realize that they, for lack of a better term, have come out, that their parents actually put them out and they have no place to go. So, we should think along those lines as well in terms of where are we targeting our resources and how they can best be targeted to assist organizations such as this.
Council look at potentially amending funds to allocate towards other nonprofits?
At this juncture, of course, I would say no, because again, the needs are infinite, but the resources are finite.
And if I can add, we also did work with Ms. Maddox to amend the initial application that was received. So there was an ESG and a CDBG application. Once we went through the budget line and she's one of the new applicants, we were able to identify that more resources would be available under CDBG. So that's why the full amount suggested is all under CDBG and not split between the two.
And you mentioned your new applicants. May I ask how you heard of the program?
Actually, I heard of the program through Miss Hill, and she was very, very helpful, right along with Caitlin, working with Caitlin as well. So they introduced and told me what was out there and what was available and what was best for us to try to figure out which grant was better for us to try to apply for.
Literally pertain to the grant, but just because my heart breaks for these kids.
Right.
What additionally could we do as council or city government to assist with other, not just this nonprofit, but others that are working on this issue?
I think working with the at-risk youth will be the biggest help. I think will be school, because it starts somewhere, and a lot of times I find that it's in our schools where our kids are going to school. If a kid is not at school on Monday and Friday, I'm pretty sure they've been trafficked, because Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is the best nights to make the money that has to be made for them. By me saying that, I was working with an individual and she used to ask me for a mouthwash, and I just couldn't understand what she needed mouthwash for. But then it finally came upon me. So anything as far as working with our homeless, sleeping bags, or things that they need because they're homeless and cold and out there. And sometimes they lie about their age, and unfortunately, if they tell me one age, I have to go by whatever they have, and then just work with them continuously.
I would say the most important thing that we would need assistance with would be to ascertain housing. A building that is local, that is zoned, or something that we can look into. Because we are finding it difficult to find a facility that we can house the youth in. So for me, that is the most important thing. I say that because a lot of the young children that have to go to children and youth services are re-victimized.
Yes.
And we have to understand that re-victimizing the child could be just continuously asking them about the story. And then we have a lot of the staff that are not equipped with dealing with a trafficked person or dealing with someone that has been sexually assaulted or abused, because it's very quick. I've worked in this system for over 20 years, and I've seen how so many children are lost within the system, or how they're placed into the most restricted place of housing where there's not a home, there's no love, it's just a number. So ultimately, our goal is to provide housing, long-term housing for these children.
I can speak a little bit to that school piece. My mom's a substitute teacher. She often says to me that she encounters a lot of young women who are talking to older men on their devices, and she grabs the phone and says, "Who are you? And what are you doing? And well, why are you a woman or girl?" And it's a lot. It happens often. So.
And once they hit the street, it's 24 hours before they're trafficked.
Yeah, she mentions that a lot, that Friday, Monday piece. She often says, these girls will often go missing. And she says, yeah, I know exactly who they were. And they were talking to some older gentlemen on their devices all the time. Well, I don't have any additional questions or comments. Heartbreaks in this. Open it up to others. Start with my far left, Councilwoman Bowers.
Thank you. First, thank you for applying, and thank you for being here tonight. Thanks for the work that you're doing. I do have a few questions. What is your primary service area?
With what regards?
Oh, location.
Harrisburg.
Dauphin County. Harrisburg.
Okay.
City. Harrisburg City.
Harrisburg City?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
How often do you meet with the youth that you serve? Is this a daily? You mentioned some of the intensive case services that you offer, so I'm just curious, how often are you interacting with the youth?
Daily. We have a hotline, so we receive phone calls throughout the nation as far as housing. Are you able to assist? What resources do you have? So I would say that we speak to our clients daily. With regards to an outreach, I would say, well, Justice, my mother goes out more than I do for the outreach part, but we try to go out at least weekly, where we're trying to identify any victims of human trafficking or sexual assault. There's a lot of youth that are under the bridge, that are living there, that are, either runaways or homeless due to certain circumstances. So we do that weekly, where we're down there giving them food, contraceptives, hygiene products. So we have contact every day. Once we do have contact with them and we are able to sit them down for case management, we go through an assessment process, we go through an evaluation process. And from there, we provide them with referral services. Whatever I can't do or whatever my mother can't do, we make sure we find someone that can do that for them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So approximately how many youth have you served?
For this year?
We can say for this year.
About 89.
Okay.
89.
Thank you. And my last question is relative to the housing that you mentioned. So what type of housing are you interested in providing? Are you looking for more of like a group home setting? I know you mentioned long-term housing, or would you be looking for something more of like a independent living situation?
So there's levels, depending on the age of the child would determine what housing we'd be able to put them in. So currently, what I would say would be the best fit for something currently would be more of like a facility type arrangement.
Okay.
not that it's running as a facility, but that it would have the floor plan and the outline for that. So when we deal with human trafficking victims, we also have to have security, because we have to understand that we are taking someone's property, someone's form of income away from them, and it does tend to get dangerous.
Okay, one more follow-up question then. So if it's a facility type arrangement with security, do you anticipate more staff being needed?
Yes.
Okay. Approximately how many new staffers do you think you would add on?
At least 6. At least.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Councilman Green?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the work that you do. I don't think a lot of people understand how much of an issue this is in the city of Harrisburg. It's something that often goes overlooked, whether just by a matter of convenience, because people don't want to deal with it. They don't want to think about it, especially when it comes to our young women and even our young men here in the city who unfortunately fall into this lifestyle. Usually never by choice, always by circumstance, of course. So thank you for the work that you do. I don't have any questions. The question I had was answered already. Thank you.
President Williams?
Thank you. I don't have any questions as well, because you and I spoke for a long period of time yesterday, and I was just amazed at the number of young people that are into that type of setting. I might want to just say to the public, not only does it happen in Harrisburg, but you made me aware that it also happens in Lancaster and York, and you work with those local, officials as well. So I'm amazed at all the work that you and all the time that you put in over the weekend, that you're out there 16, 17 hours. So I just want to thank you. And anything that we can do to assist you in any manner, please let us know.
Council Majors?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the work that you do. The question I have is for the administration. I'm just trying to make sure the funding appropriation and correct pot of money is identified. So the 2 bills we have, we talked about this earlier about making the amendment. So what is the projected amount of funding, and what is the source of funding that we're looking to utilize for this organization?
So for Justice House of Hope, the suggested amount, we're looking at $35,400 out of CDBG.
Okay, so that'll have to be an amendment because the way that it's currently provided to us through these bills is in Bill 12 and ESG for that amount. So we'll have to make that amendment. And does that change?
So that we would probably have to confer after this.
Right, to confer, okay.
That will
Absolutely.
make money available differently in both pots.
Right.
And just have to figure that out.
Yeah, okay. That was going to be my question about then how we look to potentially reallocating those ESG funds. We can talk that out. But no, I think provide a great overview. Thank you for the work that you do in this community. As everyone else said, we'll be willing to work with you on how things move forward.
Thank you.
Again, and then what I guess for the administration. So the number on this sheet shows, is this the 2-year projection? So no, it was a 2-year projection for another organization.
Yes, and I'm going to verify with the program manager to make sure that is the 2-year. And I'll make sure that gets both to council and to legal.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe in 2019, council for the first time approved these 2-year subject to appropriation following year agreements on these things. So I think that was a change back then. And
yeah.
I think so. Only on ESG funding though, I think it was. So
I want to check that because there was some concerns doing 2 years.
yeah,
Just check that out.
we will.
Yeah, I just want to verify because I know that tying funding up for multiple years can be tricky. But
It is
if we can just verify the proper amounts, because again, what we were what we received versus what we're discussing was a little different. So that I think again too, as the applicant is just trying to, address some of the issues administratively.
There's a lot of people that gotta sign a contract, so you gotta get it
Right.
right.
So, okay, thank you.
So does that mean it's 100,000 they're getting, or is it just 35,400? Because on this paperwork you gave us here, it says 100,000, so 50,000 per year.
So that's what I'm going to determine and verify if it's the 50,000 over the 2-year contract, which I'll get with Neil and make
Instead of the
sure.
35.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So you'll make those amendments, so it'll be correct on these bills.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the difference, and then making sure we're reconciling that in terms of how the CDBG funding, what that does to that overall number and the other allocations there, and then the ESG money and what it does there. Like I said,
And I will note the council has done previously, we at times have program money that comes back in for like CBG from some prior year.
Right.
And they will add to the bill with working with DBHD and appropriation for program money. So there's more funds available for the current set of things. I don't know what the current circumstance is in terms of what's availability is there. But council has had some flexibility in the past to put a little more money working with DBHD into the programs and the agreements that are presented.
right, yeah, I remember last week did some different reallocations that was proposed, but again, we just have to have accurate numbers so we can have that discussion. So look forward to getting all that reconciled. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Daniels. Any other additional questions, comments? Being none, thank you so much for all you do in the community and coming out this evening. And best of luck in your efforts. All right.
There's 2 more.
Yeah. So I don't have the name of the representative, but I have a feeling who it is. The next organization we have is Catch.
And it'll be Brian Davis.
Oh, okay. Wrong catch.
Yeah.
Senator Ford was one of the
Good evening, President. Yes.
Before this continues, I know Catch is in a different kind of situation in terms of other nonprofits, but I do sit on the.
For CACH? Yeah, you probably want to turn the question over to someone else.
Okay, you guys, you, him, and him.
Well, no, we just
I know.
for clarification purposes, the organization I am a member of was a sponsor of an event, so I didn't want to speak to that event. And I can't get just that event specific, not
Okay,
not the entire CDBG funding.
Thank you, Mr. Majors.
Just for that clarification. Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, good evening, Brian. How are
Good
you?
evening.
Okay, can you give us an overview of
Yes,
funding for a Catch?
just a reminder to everybody, my name is Brian Davis with the Harrisburg Redevelopment Authority, but I also wear another hat with the Capillary Coalition on Homelessness. And I'm glad that you mentioned your membership on the board because it's important to know a little bit of the history. And I'll be brief. But the history of the coalition is that HUD, back in the late 1990s, early 2000s, established a new source of funding for communities that was exclusive to just homeless services. So it's housing, wraparound services. What was amazing to me at the time is that HUD would actually fund services, because up until then, they were just bricks and mortar. I couldn't use any HUD funding unless it was building something. So with the birth of that, HUD added another layer of compliance, is that to get this money, to even apply for it and be eligible, communities had to establish a planning body, which is the Coalition on Homelessness was established then. And as permanent seats, the city has a permanent seat, the county has a permanent seat. Okay, so that's the scenario. And so in keeping, fast forward to today, another layer of compliance that the HUD added a long time ago was that we have a information system that tracks the clients, that every participant or recipient of HUD ESG money or this continuum of care funds, they must enter the data, they must track their clients. And it really is a compliance piece, or their clients, because then they're able to, number one, quantify the work that they're doing on a monthly, quarterly report, annual reports to HUD, okay? They establish their own benchmarks for each of those activities that get funded by HUD. And the more accurate information and data that we keep on clients and their progress towards self-sufficiency and getting a new home and the families that are helped, the better accuracy we have there, the higher points we score each year when we reapply to HUD for funding of continuing care funds. So that kind of wanted to give you that context of why the software is important. Now, Councilwoman Bowers, you mentioned it earlier about, how do you track the people? Do we have a software? You touched on software. Well, software for this, you can't buy off the shelf and install on your computers and in your network. You have to buy it from a company that actually maintains the platform. It's the level of like hospital client tracking. So it's very costly. These licenses every year we have to renew. So this funding here is the piece that the city can delivers to help offset the annual costs to the network. That also brings the $1.75 billion of continuing care funding in each year. So it's, I don't see it as a necessary evil. I see it as very valuable. I mean, of course, we have to comply because that's HUD's requirement. But your coalition is the entity then that actually arranges for the purchase, the maintenance of the software. We also add a layer of support to all of the users. And since the onset of the pandemic, we've actually had, this is falling down. We've actually had quite a few new licenses needed to be purchased. So I'd say at least 12 new licenses, and they're not inexpensive. Now we've added 12 to the existing 30 that we had. Now each year the renewal costs are going to be higher, but we work hard to keep that down. So if someone's not using a license, for example, then we'll recapture that and reassign it to somebody else. So we stay very active in working with the agencies as far as their license usages. Was that a good snapshot?
Is there anything else? You're presenting.
I think that covers the main components of the need for this funding.
Okay, Brian, I'm very much aware of what you do, Capital Area Coalition on Homelessness. My only question is, how many recipients have you helped service this year through the homelessness program?
All of the short answer is about 2,500. That's just captured in the software.
Okay.
There are like 70 agencies and organizations throughout the county and the city that we don't capture everybody else's work because they're not required to use the software.
You see it increased more this year than it was last year?
Yeah, the volume is sharply increased. I mean, a simple thing that everybody can relate to is just the fact that there were moratorium and evictions from rentals, so not everybody benefited from that moratorium. Not all of them were successful. So we saw quite a surge. What we did not see a surge in during the pandemic was the actual street homeless count. So we saw a surge in demand from, and where other agencies like Christian Church United would provide those services and they could avoid being on the street, or it would be for a short duration. But when we talk about this, the rugged street homeless, 98% with mental illness and they're self-medicating, that number didn't sharply increase here. It's starting to creep up now. We're trying to understand why that is, but it does happen at the winter time because we have a good reputation for providing winter overnight shelter and good food programs. And then Downtown Deli Bread, they opened up their day shelter. So that's been going year round. So that helps another 35 people in the afternoon. And then in the winter months, now they open up. Well, they'll open again this year for another 35 men, they'll stay there overnight. So that combined with what CCU coordinates was sufficient last year to cover the demand, and we even had some space left over. We had overflow plans because of the pandemic, but we didn't need to institute those or activate them.
Thank you. All the questions I have, I'll start to my right. Ms. Daniels, do you have any questions Mr. Davis? And Mr. Majors, do you have any questions for Mr. Davis?
No questions, thank you.
I
Thank you
think
for the work that organization.
Right. Mr. Mattson? Oh, that's right. Ms. Green?
I don't have any questions. Thank you for the work the organization does.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Ms. Bowers?
Thank you for clarifying the HMIS system. I appreciate that. And thank you again for your work.
Mr. Max, can I ask you a question? When you said you were on the board, I assumed that was a volunteer. Are you the city designee of the board?
No, I was the United Way board, when I worked for United Way.
The city designee is not prohibited. That's what I was asking.
Who is the city designee?
I am.
Okay. So we can just make sure the public understands and knows who the city designee is. Thank you, Mr. Davis. I am certainly thankful for what you do for the Coalition on Capital Area Coalition on Homelessness. It's one of the areas that's dear and near to my heart, and I hope that we can change in the next coming months as we go into the year 2022.
Thank you, Madam President.
You're welcome. Turn it back over to Mr. Mattson.
Thank you, President. Next, our final one is CEO Center for Employment Opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Keys here.
Good evening, Madam President, Chair Mattson, and members of council. It's good to see everybody. So I'll give an overview of who we are.
Name and
Yes.
organization.
So my name is Kia Hansard. I am the Director of Center for Employment Opportunities. We are a workforce development program for men and women that are returning from state correctional institutions. The one thing that I do like to mention when I talk about CEO is that we are unlike other workforce development programs. We don't sit people in front of a computer all day and tell them, get on here, find a job. We're actually putting our participants to work. So we provide immediate employment opportunities for these men and women that are coming home. And I'm sure you know that that addresses an immediate need. These are folks that have to pay on their fines and costs, help provide for their families, for themselves, but we're simultaneously working with them to secure permanent employment. We're developing relationships with employers in the area that are second chance friendly, because that's the ultimate goal. Once our participants secure permanent employment, they then go into retention with us. So we actually follow our participants for a year to continue to provide that support to them, but we also provide monetary incentives to our participants who maintain their employment. So they earn up to an additional $500 with us for just keeping their jobs. So the application we submitted is to support our job coaching and job development services that we offer our participants through paid work experience, as well as weekly sessions in the office where we're doing job coaching, which can include mock interviews, helping build their resumes, addressing those barriers that might be present that could prevent them from being employed, so such as if there are childcare issues or if there are drug and alcohol issues, helping them to resolve those issues so that they can be a successful employee in the long run. Job development is, again, pairing those participants with employers where it's going to be a good fit. We are not in the business to just dump all of our employee or our participants into warehouses. Everybody goes to Amazon, everybody goes to Chewy. Warehouse work isn't for everybody. So our participants, our intent is to put them on a career path. So if we have participants that have an interest in cooking, then we're going to find employment opportunities in the culinary field. Again, all of us can get a job, but if it's not something that you're passionate about, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to last very long. So our target population is within the
So men and women returning from state correctional institutions within the last 90 days. We find that time to be not only the most vulnerable time, but the most motivating time for our men and women to do what's right and to make, good choices moving forward. So I didn't know if anybody had any questions for me.
So I know a lot of returning citizens, a fair amount end up on some sort of public assistance at some point. And an issue that we often see in the workforce development field is that benefits cliff, where it costs, they hit a threshold where they start losing assistance, and that can be, it can cost them more to essentially work than to be on assistance. Do you have any insight into how do you address that or thoughts on that? Is that something you encounter a lot in your work?
So we do have a relationship with the Department of Human Services. We are a SNAP 50/50 provider. I'm not sure if folks are aware of that program, but because we provide employment and training services, our participants that are receiving SNAP benefits, those benefits aren't affected while they are in our program. Once they maintain or once they secure permanent employment, that's a different story.
Right.
But while they're in our program, pretty much, they're given a waiver.
Okay. Thank you. Again, Dauphin County has an 80% recidivism rate. It's the highest in the state. Again, this is one of those, a lot of need. Honestly, administration, do you think these dollars allocated are enough or sufficient to handle the need that's in the community?
Again, I'd just like to reiterate what was stated before, absolutely not. We need a lot more money because there's a huge need here in the city of Harrisburg, especially for the services that she provides as well. As many of you are well aware, many of our residents are either on or below the poverty level. As such, it's incumbent upon us to create as many opportunities as possible for meaningful employment. In doing so, it'll help us stabilize our neighborhoods and community and reduce the instances of violence as well as the crime that continues to plague our community. So, Mr. Chairman, no, it's not enough money. We definitely need more, and we have to put our heads together and figure out the best way to obtain those muchly needed, and for organizations such as hers, muchly deserved resources.
I don't mean to be repetitive with that question,
No,
but
no.
I think it's important for the public and for the record that simply the amount of funds that we get from the federal government aren't sufficient for the needs in this community.
No, they're not.
Despite being creative and despite great nonprofits that are doing a lot of work, it's still just not.
It's not enough.
If I may add something, one of the ways the way in which we are able to provide immediate employment is that we develop partnerships, whether it be with local municipalities, governmental organizations, businesses, where we provide a transitional work crew. That crew will do whatever scope of work is identified, by that public works department or that facilities department. I am proud to say that we are currently partnered with the Harrisburg Housing Authority. So you might have seen some of our gentlemen out there. They always have orange shirts on, yellow jacket or yellow reflective vests. So they're assisting, the authority in many different ways. But taking that even a step further, the authority has shown its commitment to returning citizens as they've actually hired one of our participants full-time. So that's what it's all about, partnerships that lead to career pathways for people that we expect to do well when they come home. Well, they're not going to if those opportunities aren't presented to them.
If I may share something with you as well as a community, the city of Harrisburg is hosting a job fair on October 29th from 10 to 2. The city, of course, as members of council are well aware, we have numerous open positions. In addition to, we've partnered with the Pennsylvania Chamber of Commerce, and they're sending many of their companies as well. In addition to M&T Bank. M&T Bank actually has 1,800 available positions. Many, of course, are on the retail side, but they also have mid-level management as well as executive positions available as well. And Pennsy Supply, they said they can't even deliver cement because they don't have enough drivers. So there will be several, businesses that attend this job fair. So please bring, some of your participants.
Absolutely. One other, if I can just share a participant story. So I always share this story about this gentleman. We had a gentleman who was convicted at 15 for murder. So he spent 25 years in prison. He was a juvenile lifer. A lot of things change in 25 years. This is someone who had never seen a color television. This is someone who had never used a cell phone. This is someone who never obtained a driver's license. So there were a lot of barriers, present for him coming home. Coming into CEO, he was able to be afforded the opportunity to get that paid work experience, to be able to gain those hard skills, those soft skills that are necessary to secure and maintain employment. Since coming into our program, he has secured employment with UPS. He's actually going on to become a supervisor. The money that he earned working for us, he bought a car in cash. He has his own apartment. So that's just one of many success stories that we share with folks about the work that we do.
Sorry, I was doing off, but I wasn't speaking. Bear with me, I'm recovering from a cold, not COVID. But one last thing is, you mentioned the transportation. I know that's a major barrier for people, childcare. And as Mr. Banks mentioned, we have a labor shortage at the moment. What does your programming offer? Do you do anything around the barriers around childcare and or transportation?
So in regard to transportation, one of the benefits of our program is that we actually transport our participants to and from the work site. So they don't have to worry about how they're going to get there. They just come to the office. We have 12 passenger vans and we transport them. In regard to transportation outside of that, for those who receive SNAP benefits, they are eligible for what's considered or what's called special allowances. So they have the ability to apply for funding through DHS to purchase a car. They'll give you up to a certain amount. Or if you own a vehicle that is in need of repair, they will pay up to $1,500 for those repairs as well. So again, because of that relationship with DHS, we are able to navigate that process for our participants. The other thing I want to mention too, we do provide bus passes to our participants to get back and forth to the office if there is a need there as well. As far as addressing of barriers that are specific to employment, whatever barriers might be present that are outside the scope of what we do, we most certainly make referrals for our participants. Because yes, we are a workforce development program, but we also recognize that someone who has mental health needs, that needs to be addressed first. So, it is incumbent upon us to make those referrals, ensure that, our participants are following up with those services as well.
Very good. That's all I have. Start to far right this time.
No questions, but thank you for the hard work that you do off on a few different matters. So hopefully we'll be able to work together more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for coming in this evening. I'm very impressed about what your agency does. But I can concur with you when you talk about different prospective employers, because actually, they're not willing to give a second chance. They will to a certain extent, but they need to go to full measure, because I think those individuals who are out here looking for jobs are the ones who really need to work. And we need to open the doors here in the city of Harrisburg, because we really do a bad job of trying to give a second chance to those individuals who come out of that type of environment. And but I thank you for all that you do, and I hope that we can change the schematics of what we do here in the city of Harrisburg, is how we deal with those individuals who do transition out from those type of environments. I'm looking forward to working with you. I know you and I talked and spoke about several opportunities here in the city of Harrisburg that I could offer, to your agency. So I'm looking forward to continue those conversations, and I hope that we can also do what the Harrisburg Housing Authority has done, hire those individuals that you have in your agency. So thank you very much for everything that you do.
Thank you, Madam President.
Councilman Green.
Thank you. Good evening. I don't have any questions for you. I know your program pretty well. I love the work that you do. I love the fact that you're always expanding. I see you, it looks like you signed on a contract down in York recently. So
Yes.
I love the fact that you're expanding throughout the area because we understand that we do have individuals who move to Harrisburg because this is where the halfway house is or for whatever reason, but they might not be staying here permanently, right? This is a temporary stay for them, but helping them to get on their feet back where they live at is also really important because providing the resources here and then them not being able to reunite with their family doesn't serve the ultimate goal. So I appreciate you continuing to expand on it and provide the best for the participants in your program.
Thank you.
Councilman Bowers.
Thank you. I do have a few questions. First, thank you very much for the work that you're doing. How many participants are currently enrolled?
On our current census, we have 42 participants at this time.
Excellent. How many successful job placements were made this year?
Our fiscal year runs from July 1st through June 30th, so it just kind of started. So to date, in this fiscal year, we have made 11 placements thus far. Our goal for the year is 60. So I anticipate us not only meeting that goal, but exceeding that goal.
Excellent. And how many participants have successfully completed the programs to date?
I would probably, our office opened in 2017. So approximately 275 have successfully completed our program. I know last year we had set a goal of 90, enrolling 90 participants. We were a little worried as to whether or not we were going to meet that goal because of COVID. We actually exceeded that goal. And the other thing I'd like to mention too is even in the midst of the pandemic, while a lot of other employers were shutting down, closing their doors, all of our transitional work crews continued to operate during the pandemic. So all of our participants continued to make money, and we are very, very proud of that.
I love that. The last question is relative to the retention process. So you mentioned that you follow successful participants for a year, and then they receive a stipend for retaining their jobs. After that year, what does communication look like?
Our doors are always open to our participants. We have participants that come back 2 and 3 years later. And I think that speaks to the relationships that we build with our participants. One of the things I talk with my staff about is us not minimizing the relationship that we build with our participants. As Councilmember Green mentioned, a lot of our participants are transients. They are not from this area. They come here because a bed is available. So we may be the only support system that they have, and that is not to be taken lightly. So while the retention services are set for a year, if something were to happen, any participant has the ability to come back and ask for our help, and we will definitely do our best to assist.
Thank you.
Any other additional questions or comments? Yeah. Hearing none. Thank you so much for coming out this evening and all you do in the community. Best of luck in your efforts.
Thank you. Thank you for your consideration.
That is all I have in terms of applicants. Is there an applicant that we may have missed? Okay. Seeing none, that will conclude our review of this bill. And then we'll move on to the next resolution. Okay.
Resolution 12 of 2021 is an ordinance appropriating emergency solutions grants program funds from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for fiscal year 2021 and 2022 and authorizing expenditure of such funds.
Okay. Name is last name.
Yes. Yeah. So some of the participants that have come up before were all included. They were ESG and CDBG. So there is no difference. They were just called in the order of which they responded. But the bill here is for ESG funding, and that is, as Mr. Banks previously stated, for Emergency Solutions Grant, which is specifically for homeless provider money.
Any other additional comments there? I think you kind of covered it.
No, Mr. Chair.
I don't really have any additional questions here. Because it pertains to housing, we'll start to the far left here with my colleagues. Councilor Bowers.
I don't have any additional questions. Thank you.
Agree?
I don't have any additional questions. Thank you.
Just one, I'm back to, you never even, I asked you about public improvement and public facilities. Never identified that.
I do apologize.
That's
So,
okay. You
in-
never identified what we're doing and how we're utilizing that money.
Yeah, so some of those projects are included in upgrades to curb cuts and for city projects directly related, ADA accessible sidewalks, things of that nature. And some of the public facilities can be for, one of them is Dauphin County Library. Theirs is specifically
Okay.
public facilities.
Can I get a list of those public improvements? Because
Sure.
when are we going to continue to ADA curb, and we've done this for the last 3 years?
Absolutely.
So we've not finished doing all the curbing in the city of Harrisburg?
So we did expend money out of the 2020. And then speaking with engineering, they said that there was a need, that they could use additional money for additional curb cuts.
Well, they've only did specific curbing, so I want to know the reason why we're doing only specific curbing. We're doing ADA accessibility where all the curbs should be done.
Absolutely.
So just please give me a printout of that.
Sure.
please. And also, just verify the demolition status.
Yes,
That's all. Thank you.
sure.
I could speak this, but I don't have any questions.
All right, Councilman Majors.
Just so long as we work to reconcile the differences in those numbers, which I've discussed with respect to showing that the only, I'm looking at this correctly, the only organization that we just need to make sure gets straightened out on this one is Justice House for Hope, so that they're under the right funding mechanism.
But it will absolutely alter both.
Right, it'll alter
pieces.
both pieces, and I guess any additional discussion we need to have on the potential reallocation of those resources within the current applicants. I guess the other question is, were there any additional applicants on the ESG side that applied but did not receive approval as a sub-applicant for ESG?
No, there were not.
Yeah, and then again, to Council President's point for Bill 11, if we can get just the line items for the public facilities piece, public improvement and public facilities, the housing program, and the demolition. I think everything else we talked through, but get those specifics. We have received them in the past. So we just get a breakdown of those. That'd be appreciated. Yeah, and then I'm good there. As long as we get that clarity, we're going to work that out before we move forward on this. Thanks.
Councilman Daniels? Question? Okay, there's nothing else to add. We will.
So, Mr. Chairman, just on procedure.
Yeah.
If you're going to vote on these next Tuesday, you'll have to suspend the rules to talk about the modification, because it will change the formula for both. And I'm sure DVA will be ready to talk about that a little bit. But, that would be what you would need to do. While we're not necessarily, I think, on what I would call a legal deadline, Since we changed the order of these where they weren't heard in pre-application in the summer, that these folks are going to be waiting for their money. So the longer we take, the longer they have to wait, because then there's a contract process after you vote. So just giving you the framework that we're in right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Open to suspending the rules.
Yeah, but I think.
As long as the necessary amendments.
As long as DBHD has
Right.
the
Are
changes that are required amongst the funding formulas for both, and then we're ensuring that we're having all the dollars allocated properly within CDBG and ESG.
And Mr. Majors, we can have all that information ready to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, both of you. Have a good evening. I'm sorry it was so late, but that was a very good session, because the public should be made aware of where we're spending our money, how we allocate money to what agency. And it's good that the agencies came in tonight to identify what they're going to use the money for. So thank you. Have a good evening. And I'm now going to move to public comments.
Did you refer to for a vote for Tuesday?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Like to put both bills up for a vote at our next legislative session.
Yeah, we want to put them on the agenda for a vote. Moving on to public comment, I'll start to my right. Anyone to my right, please come to the mic. Please keep in mind that if the night is long. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Yes, Tim Rowbottom, 333 South 18th Street, Harrisburg. I actually came in to discuss a different alternative to the American Rescue Plan funds, and I would like to request City Council maybe at the next session that I could discuss those more in detail. Maybe have a little segment that would be a little 5 or 10 minutes that would be set aside for that to give another alternative for those funds.
Mr. Rowbottom, we will have, I can assure you that we will be having public comment, going out to the public to have those meetings, to ask the public what they would like to see the money allocated to. So we will be having sessions out in different areas of the city.
Okay, and then while I was here, there's a couple things that, a couple issues I'd like to bring up just with addressing what I saw tonight. A big problem that I saw and that I would like to address is there's more money in administration funds going out to these two bills that we're talking about than actual funds hitting the street, which I think is sort of a slap in the face to the taxpayer that we're putting, I think it's $1.2 million that we're putting into administration and only 800,000 into actually hitting the streets. And I believe that this is one of the biggest problems in grant funding and different allocations of funds, that we're putting more money into the administration than actually what is the need. I would also like to address the demolishing that we're doing, that it seems like it's more of an agenda to demolish houses than to repair them and put time and money into fixing, because the way the costs are now on materials, it actually creates a monopoly for the elite and for the grant funneling for the I mean, when you sit there and you say how much it costs to demolish a house, and then when you say how much it costs to build, those houses are actually can't sell for what it costs to build them. So it's these type of things. We need to put more resources, I believe, into actually repairing the properties and to try to do everything within our power to try to make that more feasible to the taxpayer. And then I guess a lot of these issues also go over emergency management funds. And I would say that there's a lot of different lawsuits that are going on across the country for ADA compliance. And as I was out canvassing all over this city, one of the biggest issues that I saw and even spoke with many disabled individuals was the non-compliance of ADA requirements, and that these disabled individuals most of the time are forced out into the road to even be able to get around the city. They're not able to pass on most of the sidewalks. And I was able to graph that and actually see that, especially on the other side of Cameron Street, that there's no funds allocated to be able to address those issues. And that's part of what I wanted to address as another alternative to the American Rescue Plan funds, is to be able to put money into parks and resurrect leagues, because that was a big thing that came up in canvassing. A sidewalk initiative that would be to bring the whole city into compliance with the emergency rescue plan funds that would bring us out of the red zone, put us in ADA compliance. It would help and assist emergency management. It would assist children getting to and from school. It would address also the children, a lot of the areas, even my kids with Roland and Melrose, that a lot of those sidewalks coming down the steepest hills there don't have sidewalks on either side. So when we're saying, hey, what are the important issues that affect our children that are long lasting? I would say the most important thing that we could put funds into is sidewalks that would make things safe, that would make emergency management flow smoothly, and that would address more of a collaborative issue for the city to come in ADA compliance. And then I would just like to add one quick comment that a big need that I have seen is the Vietnamese and Asian community that was not addressed in multiple of these nonprofits, that there's a very high number of Asian and Vietnamese that are lacking the ability to get into some of these programs and to be able to have communication with the city. And then I would also, the last thing is I would just like to bring up the homeless funds with no training or volunteer requirements, I believe is actually a detriment to the process, that we're not, there's no accountability for these funds. We give them out. We don't make any requirements on the homeless or with their initiatives, with their with what they're putting forward into the programs. And I would just say that, when you have ownership of things, you appreciate it more. When you have time invested, you value it more. And so I would just say that, I think that our job is to address these in ways that if we're going to be helping, we should truly help and not just enable. So we should be putting funds more into education and more into training than we are into giving out freebies.
Thank you. Anyone else to my right, please?
Good evening, Council. Pam Parson, 1820 Holly Street. First of all, I apologize for interrupting Mr. Banks.
Thank you.
And I would also like to urge you, Madam President, or Mr. Mattson, when you are chairing a hearing, to remind people to use the microphone. And it is so important because depending on where you sit, here you can't hear, but also because we are still dealing with COVID. A lot of us are wearing masks, which does muffle the voice. And I'm not going to suggest that someone take a mask off if they're not comfortable doing that. The other thing is, when people sit here, I know that the two groups of you are talking to each other, but you're also talking to the public. So people who might not be sitting here tonight are also trying to listen. And the translation, the automatic subtitles that are generated don't work as well. It's artificial intelligence who's generating those, and they don't work as well if they can't understand what is being said. In addition, there are members of the public who transcribe every meeting at their own expense so that it can be available to the public. And I must say that I miss Momen, and I miss the attempts to do automatic Spanish translation and other sorts of translations for people whose primary language is not English. So I apologize.
Okay.
But I think that's
we do encourage, I think my city clerks and my assistant city clerk do a good job encourage anyone who comes up with the mic and sits there to make sure that they speak into the mic, because everything that you said is being recorded. So I think they do a good job reassuring individuals who do come up to the mic. So we're sorry that at that time, Mr. Banks was away from the mic a little bit. He stepped back a little bit, but we will encourage everyone who comes.
Thank you.
to present.
One of the other things that I want to say is that I'm one of these people who believes that the local elections are the most important elections that people should vote in. And so much of the information tonight was really important information for citizens in Harrisburg to know about, because not only was it talking about the money that was spent, but it was talking about many of the issues that are really important to us in the city, especially when we're talking about housing and homelessness and employment for returning citizens. And so people really need to know about this. And Mr. Mattson, I appreciate that you kept asking the question, is this enough money? Because that reinforces that there is not, even though I understood that it was a rhetorical question. I'm glad that you ask it. But this just brings me back to a point that I have often made, is that what we're talking about tonight and all this money tonight is really a Band-Aid on a sucking chest wound. That we are just, it's about dealing with people who are immediately homeless or who have been homeless for a period of time. And if we continue to expect that the free market, that the housing market and developers will develop affordable housing, we are never going to get beyond this Band-Aid, because the free market is not designed to do that. And that's something that council needs to keep in mind going forward. And I'd also like to thank council. I noticed that this past week that all the cars on Holly Street between 17th and 18th and much of 18th Street, they were all ticketed. There were cars on the sidewalk that were ticketed, which is the first time that I have ever seen that. And the big truck full of trash is gone. So it must have been towed away. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to my right, please? Anybody in the middle? Anyone to my left?
I just wanted to make a comment for the record about what a lot of community members have been observing as efforts by the current administration to kind of legislate via legislate via press release and newspaper. And this question is being said before council, but it is really for the mayor. What is the proposal? When are we going to get an actual proposal? And for the American Recovery Plan monies? And also, why did it take so long? And I think those are the questions that I've been hearing in my circles with residents, with business owners. A lot of folks have been saying, where is the proposal? Where is the proposals? Where are the written plans? Where are the things that residents want to hear and understand and see so that they can start giving input on how this money is spent? These kinds of stalling tactics only bolster the idea that the mayor is using his public office to campaign and not to actually govern. So we are waiting, and I know it's not y'all, but we are waiting as a public as residents, we are waiting for an actual proposal, actual things that we can review and give comments as we have been doing for the longest, as we did with the budget last year, as we did at different junctures to City Council and to the administration. So I just wanted to make sure and highlight that. We are waiting as residents who want to be involved in the processes of government and with the funding and with the allocations that we are due as residents of this city. And we're waiting to participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to my left? Okay, seeing none, I'd ask for Motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Madam President.
Oh, wait, before I adjourn, I must announce that we're going to have an executive session immediately following the work session tonight, and it is to discuss legal matters. At this point, may I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second? Thank you. Work session is adjourned. Yo, do we have to go upstairs or can we stay here?
If the group